You're listening to Making the Jump by MaxPreps, Episode 1. We welcome you into Making the Jump by MaxPreps, where we hope to educate you on the basics from making the jump from a high school athlete to potentially a college player. And today we're talking about the football recruiting calendar with a focus on Division I. And we're going to be talking to James Stewart. And James is a senior football recruiting coach at NCSA. A lot of questions when it comes to the football recruiting calendar, and we have James on to talk to us about it. All right, James, thanks so much for joining us here. And if you don't mind, just give a little background of what you do over at NCSA for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is James Stewart. I'm one of the senior football recruiting coaches at NCSA, Next College Student Athlete. We're here to help guide, educate, market young men and women. We don't work with just football, but we work with every sport under the sun here to help these young guys and gals find opportunities to play their sport in college, pursue the right schools, and hopefully get a scholarship and help pay for school along the way.
Sweet. Well, we'll get much more into NCSA here in a little bit too, as we walk through this process of, a parent or even a coach or a student athlete looking to begin to think about playing college football. And so I figured how we'd do this is I'd pretend to just be a parent getting started and bounce some questions off you, and you could walk us through what this all means. So for me, the first thing that I did was pulled up kind of the recruiting calendar, and as a parent here, I'm seeing a bunch of different colors and dates marked, and there seems to be 4 different periods going on throughout the year. And since we're post-signing day right now, we're in the month of February, and I'm seeing for at least the next few months what something called the quiet period. Let's begin there. What does that actually mean? What does the quiet period mean?
Yeah, so the quiet period sounds a little misleading, to be honest, because there can still be a whole lot of contact between college coaches and players during that time on the recruiting calendar. Okay. What it is going to restrict, though, is college coaches are only allowed to have face-to-face contact with a student or their family on that college's campus. So they can't come out and watch these guys, compete if they're doing wrestling or track or baseball or basketball right now. They can't come visit the high school at this period, but they're still allowed to do all the other forms of contact. So they can still be emailing kids or DMing each other on Twitter, texting, all the other kinds of communication are still allowed. Even during that quiet period, it's really just the face-to-face stuff off of that college campus. So you could still be visiting a campus with your folks, meeting with the coach in their office. That's still allowed as well.
So yeah, like you said, James, that could be a little bit misleading for people looking at this calendar. You see quiet, but like you said, really that's not the case. You could be out there making contact with coaches, and it's actually a pretty decent time to do that. Is that correct?
Absolutely. This is still a good time to be communicating with programs, especially if you're still looking for that right fit and still looking to sign. Make sure that you're still actively pursuing those.
So what would you recommend for, let's just say, a junior in high school, and it's the mid-February right now, and you're seeing quiet period. What would you recommend for, let's just say, a junior in high school, and the senior class just had signing day? What should they be thinking?
The point you brought up there is perfect. The seniors, most of them are done at this point. They're mostly all signed, and coaches are completely done with their senior class. That means now all their attention is going to be on the juniors. So this is the time that you really need to be ramping up your efforts to reach out to programs that you're interested in. In order to do that, you got to have the information coaches are going to want and need to evaluate you. So the most important thing is get a great highlight tape, your very best top 25 plays or so from your junior year, Make sure that you're really showcasing your best abilities right at the start of that film. Most coaches, they're going to watch a few clips and decide from there. So get a great highlight tape, get a copy of your transcript as well. So those two go hand in hand. Make sure you also, if you haven't already, sign up to take an ACT or an SAT. That's a question coaches are going to have for you very soon. A lot of you guys may not take it till the spring, which is okay, but you need to make sure you take an ACT or SAT at least once or twice here as a junior. That's a big question coaches will have as we go forward in the next couple months as well. And finally, I would also recommend register with the NCAA. Get signed up with the Eligibility Center or the NAIA Eligibility Center if you're interested in looking at those schools as well. You're going to need to do that before your senior year rolls around in order to take any official visits or sign that national letter of intent when hopefully you do start getting offers. So those would be my big 4 recommendations for any junior at this point who's looking to play. Get proactive, get a highlight tape, get your transcript, get signed up with the NCAA and the NAIA, and make sure you're signed up to take an ACT or an SAT.
Yeah, and for the majority of kids are going to have to actually put themselves out there to get in front of college coaches.
Absolutely right.
And not everybody,
Absolutely.
a very small portion of the kids out there are 5 stars or those top tier kids that everybody knows about. So you have to actively be putting yourself out there, right?
It's very important. Think about this, probably for mom and dad listening to this, it's like a job search. You're not just going to have companies calling you up, offering you a job. Usually you're going to have to go out and get it. So figure out what schools are you interested in. Are you looking for certain majors? Do you want to stay within a certain distance from home? Do you like a certain size of school? Figure out what your priorities are, then go find out what schools fit the bill for that. And do the research too, guys. It's very important that you're realistic, targeting schools that you fit athletically and academically. So I recommend look at the roster of those teams, compare yourself to the players at your position, look at things like their height, their weight, where they're from, their high school stats and awards. You should sound fairly similar to them, on paper, if you want to play at that program. And again, be realistic about the academics too. If you don't have the grades or test scores to get into Yale, then that's probably not a school we should be wasting time pursuing.
Yeah, for sure. So as we move along in this calendar, start to see some blue here, and I see it's the evaluation period. So is this mainly where kids are going to camps, or you also see it in the September through November timeframe, obviously when they're playing high school football? Is this really where kind of the college coach can come literally evaluate how the kid performs, or what is the evaluation
Absolutely right.
period?
Yeah, the evaluation period is really for coaches to come watch you compete. So in the fall, obviously, they're getting out Friday nights watching games, especially if you're at a nearby campus or they happen to be in town, for an away game, and you're a player they've been communicating with. You might see some coaches up in the stands there on a Friday night. During the spring, a lot of schools down south, especially in the warmer weather, that can have the nice ability to do this spring ball, they're going to come out and watch you guys practice or do your scrimmages. Or if we're not in a part of the country that does spring football, a lot of you guys will still be doing baseball or track or other sports, or just working out in the weight room, and they can come evaluate you there, talk with your coach. They can also come do an academic evaluation in that 6 weeks. It's a 6-week period from April 15th to May 31st. It's called the spring evaluation period. Those of you guys that want to play D1 football, that's an incredibly important time in the process. If you're a junior and you think you're D1, you should be getting visits during that time. If you're not, that's a sign we might need to look at other levels.
I got you. And is this also the time where kids should start to think about going to camps to be seen, or is this a different time frame from that? And do you recommend, if you're interested in a school, you should be going to their camps?
Absolutely. Camps are a critical part of this process. Coaches need to see you guys compete in person, and it's so much more than just evaluating your skills. They want to see if you're coachable. They want to see your attitude, your character, and spend an afternoon or a whole day. Sometimes they'll even offer overnight camps so they can really spend 2-3 days with you guys. So camps are critical, but what I always recommend to any player or parent who's trying to figure out what camps should we be going to, make sure you really target schools that you've already been in contact with. So obviously, don't waste time and money going to a camp at a school you have no interest in. That just doesn't make sense at all. But if you've been attempting to reach out, if you've been emailing and calling and hitting up the coaches on Twitter at the schools you really want to go to throughout this spring, and you really have not been getting responses, I probably wouldn't recommend going to that camp. There can often be 300, 400, 500 athletes at these things. And if you really want to get exposure, the coaches need to know who you are before you ever show up.
Yeah, I think that as a parent, obviously you want to save money and you don't want to just be forking out money to take your kid to every single camp out there. And I think you hit it there. Make sure you do, as a parent, make sure and with your student athlete, make sure you do research before you go to that camp.
Absolutely.
Is basically what I'm getting from it, right?
100%. And going back to what you said earlier, it's so important to market yourself and be proactive. Again, if you're not one of those blessed guys who's an ESPN top 300 recruit or whatever it might be, or MaxPreps All-American, one of those guys that's a 4 or 5-star national recruit, chances are you're going to have to work for this. So make sure that you are, again, researching schools that have what you're looking for and proactively reach out to contact those coaching staffs. If they're not responding, that's a sign maybe we're not targeting the right schools, and I would keep looking.
Yeah, I think just going back to one of your points, I think you really broke it down well with the job application, and to be thinking it that way. Like all of us, if you want a job, you're the one putting together your resume and pushing it out there. And there's not many of us that the job comes looking for you. So I think that's a great way to break it down for parents. So anyway, so moving on now. See some red on this recruiting calendar, and it's called the dead period. And is it as simple as it sounds? Basically, recruiting stops during this time, or is there more to it?
There's more to it. That's another one that's really going to be pretty misleading. The dead period only really means that there's absolutely no face-to-face contact. So even if you were to go visit a college, if you run into that coach, all they can do is say hi and keep walking. So this is definitely not a time that I would recommend going on campus visits because you would just need to go back to meet with the coach anyway. But everything else is still allowed to take place. So all the written contact, texting, emails, handwritten notes coaches can send out, social media, private messages, all of that, again, is still allowed during the dead period. It really just applies to that face-to-face contact.
Okay, so there's still a lot going on during the dead period.
Absolutely.
And it seems to be the dead periods are in August, and it looks to be typically around signing day and post even the early signing days when those dead periods really hit.
Absolutely. Now, technically, all of that can happen. It is important to know that August is about the only time college coaches are ever going to go on vacation. So it is a little bit of a dead period on the calendar, but they are technically still allowed to email, text you, call you. So don't completely give up, but also don't be discouraged at these times of the calendar. If we're not getting a ton of contact, it is a time for coaches to recharge generally.
I got it. Okay, that makes sense. And then moving on to the contact period that seems to be post high school football season or even in the playoffs a little bit and late into January before National Signing Day. What is contact period?
So the contact period is really when coaches are going to be able to get out and visit face-to-face with these players and their families off campus. So that's going to be a big opportunity for those in-home senior visits there for a lot of you guys. It's also going to be postseason because the reality is for a lot of these programs, they're just so busy and they may or may not have the coaches or the recruiting budget to be doing that on top of all of their game week prep. So postseason is going to be a big time for this as well. Okay,
so when you're seeing some of those kids post some pictures on social media with the college coach, and that's in this contact period when the college coaches are coming to make in-house visits, stuff like that.
Absolutely, in-house visits. Again, and all of the other forms of contact too. Especially if it's a school that might be a little far away and they can't get to your living room real quick. Still, this is a big time that you want to be actively communicating with coaches. Again, whether it's Twitter, email, phone calls, whatever's been working for you, make sure you continue to communicate because they need to know from you guys you're still interested just as bad as you want to be hearing from them.
Yeah, definitely. I want to take the listeners through as if they have a son coming up as a ninth grader, and the son has told their parents, "Hey, mom, dad, I'm super interested in playing college football." What should they be thinking about as their son progresses through the 4 years of high school?
Great question. I think you can really kind of break it down into three phases of recruiting. So for most freshmen and sophomores, you're starting out on the freshman or JV team. You're in that first phase where we need to focus on research and educating yourself on the process. So research, what schools are you interested in? Who has the major you're looking for, or whatever else you might be prioritizing in your college decision. And research, make sure you're looking at the roster, compare yourself to the players at your position. As a freshman, you probably aren't going to be the same kind of size, height, weight, have the same kind of stats and awards that those guys have. But that's where you need to get to by the time you're done with senior year. If you want to go play at Alabama, you need to have the same kind of resume that their running backs or linebackers or D-line have when you're all done with your high school career. So research that, know where the bar is at, and start to get to work, right? Get in the weight room. Really, it starts freshman year. If you want to be a big-time college football player, you're going to have to really put in work over a period of time to get there. The education part is more of learning about the process. Learn the rules. Read that NCAA guide for the college-bound student athlete. Learn about what kind of academic requirements there are to be eligible to play, D1 football. What kind of test scores and GPA do you need to have? Educate yourself with getting more comfortable talking to coaches and talking to adults. That's something that doesn't come natural for a lot of 14, 15-year-old guys. So make sure that you're getting good at that now so that when you get up to that varsity level as a junior, for most of you, you're ready to move into phase two. That's when you need to start reaching out to coaches and really getting that exposure going. So you have varsity film, the schools you like now. You've already done that research. We need to start getting more active with promoting yourself. Email coaches, call coaches, get those recruiting questionnaires filled out, get on Twitter, follow their coaching staff, reach out and try to get communication going between you and those college programs. And then basically from signing day when you're a junior until your own signing day as a senior is going to be phase three, where that's when, for most of you guys, all of your official visits, your offers, and a lot of that more serious communication, regular phone calls, regular communication back and forth between you and the coach, that's all going to take place during that final year. So really get ready for building relationships with coaches during that time, figuring out what schools are the best fit, and ultimately making that right decision when you're ready to commit.
Yeah, and James, what about the importance of the high school counselor and the high school coaches through this phase? You want to make sure that you're doing the right stuff, especially on the education side as well, education being school, to make sure that I assume you're taking the right classes and you're making sure you're reaching those requirements as well.
Absolutely critical. So that's something that, again, if you guys are reading through that NCAA guide for the college-bound student athlete, or NAIA for that matter, it'll really break it down what kind of classes you need to take. But that's a conversation you should be having as freshmen or sophomores, at least, with your guidance counselor. Make sure you're taking the right courses. You could have a 4.0 GPA, and if you didn't take enough core classes, you're going to be ineligible to play D1 or D2 football. So it's very important that you educate yourself on that. And I like you mentioned the high school coach. That's a critical part of the process too. A lot of college coaches are going to want to get a recommendation from him. Is Johnny coachable? Is he a team leader? Does he work hard in the off-season program, or do you guys need to kick his butt to get him to workouts? Right. So get on the same page with your coach. Make sure he's aware you want to play in college, and make sure that you have a good relationship with the coach. That's a very important part of it. One last thing I'll add on the coaches, guys, getting you recruited is not their job. If they are able to help you and they're willing to help you, that is a bonus. Thank them and absolutely take that assistance. But ultimately, that's going above and beyond their job description. So this is on you. If you want to play college football, it's not the coach's job. It's not mom and dad's job. You're the guy who's going to be going and doing that. So make sure you put in the work.
Yeah, and part of putting in the work is researching, companies like NCSA. And at what age should a parent start to reach out to NCSA? As you guys do a great job of coaching basically people through this process and even making sure kids land in the right spot. As parents listening out there, or even the athletes, at what age should they start to think about NCSA and reaching out to someone like you who can help them through this process?
I think it's really more driven by the student athlete than anything. If your son is 100% sure he wants to be playing college football, whether he's in 8th grade or he's a senior and just now realizing that, that's the time that we should really be having a conversation. You're always welcome to contact us anytime if you guys just have questions, but we need to make sure that your son or daughter is really bought in and ready to get to work and really willing to get in the weight room, willing to do the work in the classroom, and willing to do the work to get themselves in contact with college coaches and build relationships. If they're 100% sure they want to play, we can help them, and we're ready to get started.
Okay. And so that could be at any age, just kind of when they figure out that they do want to do this. That's basically when they should start to think about NCSA to help them through this process.
Or at least have a conversation with us. Unfortunately, we're not able to help every single student athlete, but
Right.
we want to at least make sure that we're able to have a conversation with you, let you know, what your options are likely going to be, and if that's a great fit for you, perfect. Let's work with you. We'd love to help you.
Well, James, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I think you've answered a lot of questions that I know a lot of people have. And for those, especially for those who haven't been through it, there's a lot of question marks out there, and you need to figure it out. And a lot of it's doing your homework and researching and putting yourself out there. So I know this will be of value to a lot of parents out there, and we really appreciate it. And make sure if you want to get in touch with NCSA, James would be a great guy to get in touch with, and we'll when we post this stuff, we'll make sure to get your information linked up. So, James, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we thank James once again for joining us. That's NCSA, Next College Student Athlete, if you want to dive in more. And to me, what stood out the most in our conversation is the point he made where if you want a good job, if you want a job, you got to make your resume. You have to go out there and put yourself in front of employers. And it's the same way when it comes to the recruiting phase. For the most part, most of you are going to have to do it all yourself, put together your resume, get in front of college coaches, and find a home that best fits for you. So for me, that I took that the most. Obviously, we talked about dead period, quiet period, contact period, evaluation period. We broke down the calendar. But again, I think the biggest thing for me was that job application point he made. Again, we thank James for joining us. I'm Steve Montoya. Thanks for joining us on Making the Jump by MaxPreps.